It just doesn't allow me when I'm on
Do me a
this.
favor, if you just joined us, if you would please go ahead and mute your audio. That'd be just great. All right, well, listen, I appreciate everybody being on the call today. We are looking forward to catching up with you and going over a number of things that are happening here with Coldwell Banker right here in Colorado. First and foremost, Tammy and I are both absolutely thrilled to be able to bring you Eliot Eisenberg today. These town halls that we've been doing, this being our third one, are really designed to do a couple of things. First of all, create a forum or environment to be able to give you some information about what's going on, how we're operating right now. It's also designed to be able to inspire you during this, this time of, in many ways, confusion and uncertainty. And then lastly, it creates an opportunity for us to be able to answer any questions that you might have. If you would please mute your phone right now, that'd be great. As we begin to move forward, introduce our guest speaker today. As many of you know, no stranger to Colorado, Eliot Eisenberg, PhD, is an internationally acclaimed economist and public speaker, specializing in making economics fun, relevant, and certainly educational. Dr. Eisenberg earned a BA in economics with first-class honors from McGill University in Montreal, as well as a master's and PhD in public administration from Syracuse University. Eisenberg is the chief economist for Graphs and Laughs, LLC, a Miami-based economic consultancy that serves a variety of clients across the United States. He also writes a syndicated column and authors a daily 70-word commentary on the economy that is available at www.econ70.com. Dr. Eisenberg has spoken to hundreds of business groups and associations around the country, serving as keynote speaker on topics including economic forecasts, economic impact of industries such as home building, consequences of the government regulation, and other current economic issues. Dr. Eisenberg has been invited to testify before lawmakers and is often asked to comment on proposed legislation. His research and opinions have been featured in Bloomberg, Business Week, Bureau of National Affairs, Forbes, Fortune, and many, many other publications. He's regularly featured guest on talk shows and public radio. Dr. Eisenberg was formerly the senior economist with the National Association of Home Builders in Washington, D.C. He's the creator of the Multifamily Stock Index, a first nationally recognized index to track the total return for public firms principally involved in the ownership and management of apartments. Also the author of more than 100 articles, serves on the expert advisory board of Mortgage Market Guide, and is a regular consultant to several large real estate professional associations, financial institutions, and investment advisory groups. Eliot's interests include walking at least 5 miles a day and reading as many newspapers as he can possibly get his hands on. He loves ice hockey, talking economics, and also Coldwell Banker, Colorado. Eliot, it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. Thank you, Chris. Let's begin. My gosh, there's a lot to talk about. And as most of you know, when I like to begin my talks, it's always, let's go through GDP. That's the single most important thing. That'll give us a structure to think about things. And you see the C, the I, the G, and the X minus MC is household consumption. It was what was carrying us in January and February, in the last half of last year, most of last year, really. I, corporate investments in plant and equipment, government spending. G, wasn't really going anywhere, and net exports weren't going anywhere either. It was C. And what's happened is this coronavirus thing, because they've locked us all in our houses, C's now gone into the garbage can. And the way we're trying to fix this is by getting G up. G is going to expand dramatically through all the things that we'll talk about them. And by pushing G up, they're going to put money into our hands. That'll help us spend money. And that will keep the economy afloat while we remain in this weird economic coma, limbo, timeout, whatever you want to call it. But the key thing is the government wants to prevent the healthcare crisis from becoming the healthcare crisis from becoming a financial crisis, and God forbid the financial crisis from becoming an economic crisis. So you're trying to put a buffer between the healthcare and the finance and the finance and the economics, and they're putting these buffers in by stimulating the hell out of our economy with lots of money. And you can see how important this money is, because look at these forecasts. These are forecasts put up by different investment banks and places, and you can see Q2 GDP ranging anywhere from -10 to -40. I personally think it's going to end up being somewhere around -30 or -28 if I really get it right, a little bit less than -30. This is an economic forecast by a consensus of economists. You can see poor Q1, objectively a really crummy Q1. Q1 doesn't look that bad because Q2 looks horrible. But if you look in the far left of the graph, you can see what went on during the Great Recession. 18 months, 6 quarters of bad numbers. And you can see the number that we've got right now expected for Q1 is almost as bad as the second worst number in the 6 quarters of crappy numbers for the Great Recession. So this is objectively a pretty poor number, but Q2 puts it into perspective. And Q2 is just downright friggin' ugly. There's no question. In terms of the recovery in Q3 and Q4, the consensus of economists have us growing at somewhere around 6-7%, 6% in Q3 and 7% in Q4. I'm not quite that optimistic. I think it'll take longer to get going, but certainly by Q4 we're good to go, and Q3 could be mildly negative, maybe mildly positive. But Q2 is just going to be horrible. That's the key point I want to get through to you at this point. And you can see why. Here's the University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Index. It came out yesterday or day before yesterday, Thursday. I think a Thursday or Friday it came out. And you can see it's pretty crummy. It's not quite as crummy as it was during the Great Recession, but it'll get worse, don't worry. Because we still haven't quite acclimated to the current situation we find ourselves. This is hotel occupancies. Well, we're not going anywhere. We're not flying anywhere. We're not going to any hotels, right? So it's way down. It's down 60, 70, 80, 70%. It's down way down. It's down from 65 to 40. This is a huge decline. You can see this is the hotel occupancy rates last week were as bad as they were in the week after Christmas. That's how bad things are, right? Air travel is down 95%. In entire industries, entire sectors of our economy is completely closed down. Movie ticket sales are well down. Restaurant traffic, this is takeout traffic. This comes from Open Table. It's not takeout. So McDonald's is doing better and Wendy's are doing better. That's important. And other restaurants have gotten to do more takeout, but you're not going to have fancier restaurants doing takeout. So total employment and so on in the restaurant industry will be well down, even if there's some takeout activity going. Now, let's look at light vehicle sales. Light vehicle sales are a particularly important thing to look at because their supply chains are very big, and they're the next biggest thing people buy outside of, you guessed it, a house. And look at the very, very far right of this graph. You can see the total spending on cars has fallen by a third. And that third, interestingly enough, is composed of 2 parts. The first half of March, when we were still going around, but we were nervous, they fell by 15%. The second half of March, they must have fallen by closer to 45% to get to the 30% decline. So the second half of March was just absolutely dismal, and that will be like April. So in April, we may even have less sales because they'll have a full month like the second half of March. People don't leave their house. They're not buying a car. They've got nowhere to go, right? I mean, this is not, this is pretty obvious. But there is good news out there. Alcohol sales are way up. So if you're in the booze business, congratulations. Now, the booze sales skyrocketed, and now they're coming down a little bit because either we're getting more cirrhosis of liver, I'm joking, I hope, or we've just acclimated to living. We bought a lot in advance, and we just can't drink it quite as fast as we hoped, we thought, we feared. I don't know what. Gun sales are up, so if you're selling a gun shop with booze, that's even better, although a bad combo, I suppose. And last but not least, marijuana sales are well up. So there are sectors that are doing well. Maybe it's because we're spending too much time with our families, and we realize a little bit of mental separation is needed, if not physical separation. You put it together, personal consumption expenditures, 70% of GDP, which is the most important thing, and it was the only thing driving our economy prior to the recession, onset of the recession, which happened in the week of May 9th, March 9th, if I'm not mistaken, when we had a huge increase in unemployment. It's going to drop by 10, 12, 15%. I mean, this is 20%. A precipitous decline in the second quarter, right? Because we're home, we're not doing anything. And we're going to stay alive if all goes well because of government intervention and this money that they're giving us to keep us going during this crazy situation that we find ourselves in. The second term in GDP is I. It was already going nowhere beforehand for a bunch of reasons. And now you can see here in this graph, small business confidence dropped quite substantially from its prior level of the low 100s. It's now in the mid 90s. And I suspect it'll get a little bit lower before things are all said and done. I think there's expectation that the PPP loans and the EIDL loans and all these other things that are aimed at small business will help. And they will, and they'll make a huge difference. And this government intervention, to put it mildly, has been huge, quick, and that's very different than it was last time, 12 years ago, when Fannie and Freddie were nationalized and Bear Stearns went under and Lehman Brothers in September or October. It took the government last time a lot longer. And this government intervention is going to prevent the worst from happening by far. This will not turn into the Great Depression. This will be a slow recovery, a faster recovery, but it'll be a recovery and it'll be a relatively short recession, assuming coronavirus cooperates. Now, the second term, corporate investment's not doing well in part because energy's doing badly. I mean, they're trying to now big compromise OPEC and Russia, and even the US has gotten involved, trying to reduce oil production by 10 million barrels. I'm not sure it's going to make much of a difference because we're 30 million barrels overproducing right now because we've had a once in a generation unnecessary increase in production by about 3 or 4 million barrels from the Russians and the Saudis fighting, and a once in a lifetime reduction in demand by 20 million barrels because we're not flying and driving and going anywhere all over the world. So to reduce it by 10 million barrels, while helpful, is like, you know, putting a Band-Aid on a dam that's broken. It's going to do something, but not a lot, all else equal. So you can see here, global demand well down by quarter, different assessments, different groups, but there's been massive destruction in demand here. And as a result, oil prices are in free fall. Natural gas prices aren't doing very well either. So all the energy states are getting hit a little extra because of this. In Texas and the Permian Basin and eastern New Mexico, especially hard, and North Dakota, especially hard. But Colorado, Weld County, they're going to feel it as well, necessarily. Corporate profits, they're not going to be going anywhere this year. We know that. And if you look at this graph, the triple B corporate debt in gray is what I want you to focus on. It's barely above investment grade. If this is investment grade, triple A, double A, triple B sits here. If it gets downgraded, it falls below the magic line. It's no longer investment grade. This is one of the things the central bank is trying desperately to stop, this creating a financial crisis. We don't want a financial crisis. If financial markets seize up, if spreads between different types, qualities of bonds start to really widen a lot, it gets very hard to refinance debt. But nonetheless, you're having downgrades on this debt. You can see in the far right, the purple, the far right bar on the right, the top purple part is downgrades of triple B debt to below triple B are no longer investment grade. And the central bank, among other things, by putting tons of money into the economy, is trying to reduce the impact of all these bad things happening in financial markets. Because if enough bad things happen in financial markets, it seeps over into the real economy and becomes an economic problem, not just a financial market problem. Right? Healthcare, again, seeping into finances, seeping into the real economy. Right? This is the issue that the central bank is trying desperately to avoid, and the Congress and everybody. Manufacturing is back in recession. It was just getting out of recession, kind of the end of last year, early this, and now we're back in. Now you can see here, it's not going to be tremendously volatile, but it'll fall. The blue line and the yellow line, which are both now well below the x-axis red's not in this graph, but it'll get there soon enough. Trust me on that score. So manufacturing is in recession. Profits are down. This graph shows factory utilization rates that have been dwindling going down for a year and a half already, because of trade wars and slowing global growth and strong US dollar and stuff, which are just background music now. But because factory utilization rates weren't high, firms aren't going to invest. The second term in GDP ain't going to go anywhere. Now, the third term, this is critically important. G. This is the magical term. The central government, the federal government, and the central bank are so actively involved this time around. Last recession, the Great Recession of 2008-9, pardon me, took the government 8 or 9 months until October before they really began to do things like the TARP and then the ARRA with I think Leighton Bush's term, and then Obama did more in his term, early in his term. This was like a year into the recession already. Here, the central bank and the federal government, the Congress got involved a week after the recession begins. I mean, They weren't quick enough, in my opinion, and they didn't do enough yet, but they're on it. They're paying attention. They're going to have a fourth bill. This picture shows what's going on, all the different things that are being done, right? And the key thing I want you to look at here is small business, the 377 billion. This is the PPP loans. I think the EIDL loans are coming somewhere else. But there's effort to help individuals through pension, through welfare, through unemployment insurance, extending the duration of unemployment and the amount of unemployment, so you have purchasing power if you lose your job. We're trying to keep firms alive, big firms, small firms. And then the central bank was given in here $454 billion to lend. And if they lend at 10-to-1, that's $4.5 trillion. So you've got $4.5 trillion there. This is 2.2 minus that 450 is 1.8. You've got almost over $6 trillion of money that's going to be out there trying to keep the economy afloat while we're in this coma. And they'll need more money. It's not going to be that fast. We're not going to get out of it nearly as quickly as we think, because we're not going to open the economy up straight away on May 1st. It's not going to happen. Is the budget deficit going to explode? You better believe it. But don't worry about it. This is not the time to worry about it. You know, when the house is burning, you don't worry about your water bill. You get the fire turned off, you get the insurance money, and then you put on some better faucet protector thingamabobs to get the water bill down. But now is not the time. The house is burning. The central government and the central bank, the federal government, are doing at this point a tremendous amount. They've prevented the worst from happening. We have a mild trade war too, which isn't helping. The cost of importing stuff from China is still higher than it should be, and exports are hampered because of it. But again, this is now virtually background music in the short run because of Corona. And the dollar is very strong. Why is the dollar strong? The dollar is strong because everybody wants dollars when you're nervous. You don't want euros, you don't want yen, you don't want pounds, you want dollars. So everybody wants dollars. The central bank has made dollars available for all central banks, the 16 biggest central banks, you know, Canada, Australia, England, EU, Europe, ECB, and China, so that people's demand won't push the dollar higher, which is an important thing for us. But the central bank is they're all in. I mean, they're doing things they never dreamt of doing. They're taking Bernanke's playbook from 2008 and expanding it with more chapters. They're really aggressive. And Powell, the central bank chair, said he'll do whatever it takes to keep the financial system working and credit moving around as best he humanly can. And he's done a good job. Now, this graph tells you how precipitous the decline in our economy has been. Normally, this graph is in a short little space between +1 and -1. And now, this graph here doesn't show you the severity of the decline. It's about -27 on the back of the prior graph. -27 right there. Unbelievable, right? This next graph here shows you how big the decline in the last month has been vis-a-vis the last 5 or 6 or 7 years of economic activity since 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 years of activity. This is 12 standard deviations. So if somebody asked me, Eliot, what are the chances of this happening? I would say it's 0.00000000001, and yet it happened. This was so out of the blue, so inconceivable virtually. Labor markets, critically important because they're the guys who buy houses and buy cars and buy stuff. They were really tight, but look at it now. You see it bumping along the bottom of the graph for like 50 years, since 1960, literally 50 years of little movement. And now look at last couple of weeks. It's at 7 million. It's 10 times its prior peak. The prior peak was 81, 82, when it was almost 700,000. Now it's 7 million. We've lost 17 million jobs. This is unprecedented decline. The rapidity of this decline is mind-boggling. That's why the federal government, Congress and the administration, the central bank are so actively involved, hoping to give money to households and small business and big business and hospitals and state and local governments that are being walloped because tax revenues coming down from sales taxes and income taxes and healthcare spending is skyrocketing. These places all need massive amounts of money. Look at this graph here. This is a 4-week moving average of initial claims of unemployment. And after 3 weeks of disaster, we're over 4 million. Again, you can see the blue line at the bottom going nowhere for in this case, 20 years. And unemployment's going to start to spike up. It'll be 10% next month when they release the April data, maybe 12%. Google searches for filing for unemployment have peaked out. They went up, they peaked about 2 weeks ago and have now been coming down. Hopefully that suggests unemployment claims are going to come down too. As for rates, they're going nowhere. Central bank has told us this. The Fed funds rate, oh, that's a mistake. It should be 0.125, not 1.125. My apologies. By the end of this year, they're going to stay where they are at 0.125. Next year, if we're really lucky and the economy is really good, and we've pretty much by the end of the year gotten back all the jobs that we lost or come really close, maybe they raise it 25 or 50. And maybe the following year they raise it another 25 or 50 bips. So maybe at the end of 2 years from now, maybe they raised rates 1%. And that's the best case scenario. It may well be a big fat zero because Powell doesn't want to jinx the markets. He doesn't want to give investors any reason to fear that as job recovery takes place, he's going to start putting the hammer down. Remember, he wants inflation to go up, and right now there's massive deflationary pressures in all sectors of the economy: restaurants, hotels, airlines, all the movies, all these things, massive deflationary pressures out there. So that rates aren't going to go anywhere. There's no question. Now, as for housing, what's the story with housing? I'm not too optimistic in the short run. I mean, in the long run, the fundamentals are pretty good. We're still vastly underbuilt. There's a vast undersupply of housing. We need many more houses than are being built. Builders haven't built nearly as many. That's going to remain. Our population is not going to go down. It continues to rise. The jobs will recover. The question is the immediate short run. And in the immediate short run, we see copper prices that are really low. And every new home has got copper. Every new building has copper. Almost all new things, anything with electricity or batteries, and it's got copper. So if you see copper prices down, not a good sign. And now this is true. It shows mostly China because they're the marginal buyer of all commodities. But when we know we're not going to have corporate investments in plant and equipment, we know home builders are starting to have real trouble getting stuff built, right? They can't get permits, they can't get suppliers, they can't get workers. There's tons of impediments being put in their way. And we see from the University of Michigan's monthly or bi-monthly survey of consumer sentiment, buying sentiment for large household durables, not houses, this is not cars, but it's everything else, not houses, not cars, has plummeted. So in a situation when you're at home, when you're not buying cars, looked at earlier, and you're not buying durables, it's very hard to see a story where you can convince me that we're going to buy houses. In the short run, we're not going to be buying houses, right? We know this from the Mortgage Bankers Association. It puts out weekly data on this. And the last 3 weeks, first-time mortgage apps have been getting progressively worse. So 3 weeks ago, which means data from 4 weeks ago, sales were year over year were down 11%. 3 weeks ago, meaning 2 weeks ago, meaning 3 weeks ago's data, they were down 24%. And last week's, meaning 2 weeks ago's data, was down, as this graph shows, 33%. So you've got first-time mortgage apps down by 33%, car sales down probably by 50%, durable purchases simply not happening. So in the short run, this isn't going to go. Housing sales can't possibly do well. I saw listings data today from Redfin. Okay, they're a different business model, and they've laid off a bunch of their staff, but delistings from their data have skyrocketed. You can't sell a house that delists either. And it's hard to show a house if somebody's inside it. I mean, the impediments here are just absolutely vast, right? If you put this into perspective, so this is the same graph I'm showing you here, the same graph you've got here, but instead of looking at the years in the time series way, we're looking at every year as one graph put on top of the other. So it shows you the magnitude of the decline, if you will. And look at that blue line. It's down precipitously. We're now, 8-9 years of decline in mortgage purchase applications. This has to mean we're buying fewer homes, right? Now we can say this is going to end some point, and GDP in Q3 is either neutral or middle positive. Q4 should be pleasantly positive, and 2021 should be just a gangbuster year. So this is a short-run problem, but it's not a trivial problem. You don't go out and wreck your capital structure. Right? Now, don't go hire 12 new agents. Maybe think about which agents you want to pick off from other firms when they go under. That's something to have a list on. But I wouldn't spend a lot of money right now because we don't know how long this will last. And this is what I want to end my conversation. First, this is how to get a hold of me: cell number, phone number, Twitter handle, all these things. And I put out 70 words on economics. This, as you mentioned earlier, the way to get, if you want to hear from me every day at night, 70 words, no graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. You can text the word bow tie, just the way you see it, BOWTIE, no hyphen between the words bow and tie, no space between them. One word, the 5-digit number 22828. You'll hear from me every day until you die. And if you die and go to hell, because you drink too much booze, marijuana, and buy too many guns, then I'll follow you there too. I'm kidding. So let's end off with the coronavirus itself. Everything I've told you has been predicated on this thing ending soonish, and the government allowing us to open up soonish. Maybe we begin to open in early May if all goes well, maybe middle of May, and we open slowly. It's first going to be, office space with more spacing. The last thing to open up is going to be a baseball game or a rock concert, right? Those are going to take a long time, and they may not open for a year or two. I don't know until we have a vaccine, because the risk is too big. But will this thing come back in 6 months in the fall? 8 months? Who knows? Will we get out in time? I don't know. The longer it lasts, the more serious the recession and the more damage, the slower the recovery will be, because the more tenuous the relationships between employers and their employees become. We want this to end quickly, but not so quickly that we endanger ourselves again with a rebound in the virus until we have at least a protocol to help people who are sick beyond intubating them and praying, essentially, right? And we need to get a vaccine down the road, but that's not going to be there for a while. So assuming that this vaccine goes into quasi-hibernation for a while, and we know how to social distance and remain socially distanced for the foreseeable future, we can slowly open up the economy and see how it does. We may not be able to open our borders because we don't know who's going to be coming in. So it's tenuous. But if things slow down and we have to stay in our homes longer, the government will borrow more money. I mean, they've already told us they are going to do everything they can to prevent this from becoming an economic disaster beyond the minimal amount it has to be, and the damage it's causing by having to stay in our houses. But they're going to preserve our purchasing power. They're allowing people to stay in their homes and give forbearance on mortgages. And they're allowing tenants, if Fannie and Freddie hold a mortgage on that multi-fam structure, to not pay their rent, and they won't make the landlord pay the mortgage either. So they're doing things much smarter. They're getting the money much quicker. But there are certainly, hopefully, I'm optimistic. We know the worst won't happen, but we simply don't know when this will exactly end. That's the big problem. The data is pretty good. We're hitting our peaks right now. 10 days, it should almost all be over. So this May 1st or May 10th seems reasonable. I hope I've given you some food for thought. I don't want to leave you in a really negative area here, just that the threats are real. I don't want you to think that May 1st, everything's back to normal. You watch the countries that are opening up, and it's slow and steady, and they're making them in Eastern Europe, where they had very few deaths because they closed down their countries really fast. They're making them wear face masks every time they go out of the house, all kinds of we may have to do that sort of things if we start going out. We have some time for questions and answers. I hope I can answer some or most, whatever. Thank you very much for your time. Sign up for my blog, and thank you very much.
Eliot, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for all of your wisdom and ideas around not only the economy, but what's happening right now with COVID-19. Tammy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you have questions, please take this opportunity. Love to have you use the chat box if you would on the right-hand side of the screen. Or if you dare, we can try just you can take yourself off mute and ask a question. We do have more than 500 folks on this call. That might be a bit unruly. So if you can, go ahead and ask on the chat.
Eliot, I have a question for you. Why are banks tightening their lending standards? I mean, didn't they learn from the last time during the Great Recession? I mean, I just read a report about JP Morgan, and you have to have a 700 FICO now, 20% down. I'm assuming other financial institutions are going to follow suit. That just makes it harder for us.
It certainly does. The federal government's pushed them very hard to make money available and be thoughtful and be nice and all those sorts of things. And the government's giving them all kinds of money to lend out through PPP and so on, right? Short of that, what are you going to do? Banks are in good shape. They're not the center of the problem here. We don't want them to become the problem, but we also don't want them to not lend. So we're caught in this between a rock and a hard place. I'm really sorry. They got the memo. It's just that they're not reading it as carefully as we'd like.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Tammy, any questions on the chat?
Let's see. What do you think will happen with the timeline in regards to flattening the curve?
Well, we've done a very good job on that. There's no question we've done a good job. Things, had New York not done what they did, had the West Coast, which is better than the East Coast, California, they put things in place before New York did. Their number of deaths and number of cases and intubated patients are much, much less than the East Coast. So what we're doing is working. It's clearly working, and we're getting more machines, right? More ventilators. GM's now going to make tens of thousands of them, and so on. So if, God forbid, this virus rebounds in the fall or something, we'll have masks and ventilators and intubators and protocols, and we should be in much better shape. Hopefully we don't get there. But we've brought the curve down, the number of deaths, what was projected, the Murray model, which is the model that people seem to like the most in the world of epidemiology, was predicting 200,000 deaths. We're now at 20. I mean, that's 20,000 deaths. That's 40% of Vietnam here. This is a huge number, but it's a tenth of what it could have been. So we've done a good job, and the hospitals are getting better, and so on. But I'd like to see no new cases, and then no new cases for a week or two before we get out of our house, because that tells us that the virus is really largely gone.
Okay, thank you. It's also positively grim. Where do you suppose the most opportunity is right now?
Depends where. I mean, chicken farming is really lucrative business. Chicken farming, a dozen eggs is over $3. I mean, who can afford to buy eggs? They were less than $1 a month ago. I should have gone long eggs. Who knew? There are these weird places that are doing well. I think the key thing for any business now is to figure out how to stay alive. A. B. Look at your competitors and see who's weak and see who you can take advantage of in the long run. Well, who are the good realtors that you want to get? Who are the good brokers that you want to get? Because some firms aren't going to make it. And if you do and they don't, bully for you. And the market you go back to when you get out of your cage and we get back to work will look a little different. We're going to be more technologically oriented. People are going to be working from home more. They're going to want showings that are electronic. So get with your technology and figure out how to take advantage of mistakes made by your opponents. I think that's what you can do in the immediate short run. I don't think you're going to become a chicken farmer.
Okay, great. So we're just getting a lot of applause for you, Eliot. People want you to come back in a couple weeks. They love you.
I will. I will, yes.
So
I will not run for president of the United States. No, thank you.
okay.
Smart man.
Let's see, Eliot, you seem more optimistic about PPP and programs, yet the rollout seems slow and flawed at best.
That's it. So good point. So the PPP is going to eventually get the money out. The problem is when. And when the money comes, optimism hopefully will go up. But whoever asked this question is right on. Implementation is always the problem. It took Congress 5 or 6 extra days to get the bill passed, the CARES Act, the $4.2 trillion, and they dawdled, and 5 million people lost their job. And now PPP is slow, and another 5 million people will lose their jobs. So implementation problems may cause 10 million people to lose their jobs because the economic decline is so phenomenally precipitous. So yeah, but if you get unemployment, that's okay, because you're going to get 13 extra weeks, not 26 weeks, which is normal number, is now going to be added on to 39. And the monthly payment you get, weekly payment from your state, is now going to be topped off by 600 more. So purchasing power will remain. The problem is the relationship between the employer and the employee gets severed. And that's a problem. Once the attachment's not so direct, and they're not being furloughed or temporarily laid off, they permanently lost their job, the firm's not quite so eager to rehire and so on. Take them longer to find a job. That means the recovery will take long. That's why I'm not quite so optimistic about Q3. I don't think it's going to be all puppy dogs and kittens in Q3. It may take us a large chunk through Q3 to really get going. April's going to be terrible. May's going to be awful. Okay, June starts to get, June, July, we begin to get better. And by August, July, August, if all goes well, so second half of Q3, we begin to make some serious progress. That's my hope, assuming implementation goes reasonably well. Implementation is critical. Yeah, they're absolutely right.
All right, we'll take one more question. Can you please ask him about his thought about millennials buying? There's some.
Wow.
chatter on the chat about they're hoping for a crash.
Wow, that's sad. That's sad. This is a seminal. It depends how old these millennials are. I mean, my daughter is 21. She's a Z generation, but just barely. So some millennials are as young as 23, 24. Some are as old as 40 years old. The older half, if they're above 30 or something, this is going to be less meaningful. They will have remembered the crash of not 9/11, but they'll remember the 2008, 09. But the younger ones, this is going to be a seminal event in their life. They'll carry this with them on the back of their shoulders, like the prior generation carried 9/11. So this is a big deal. I don't see a crash. I just don't. We can't have $6 trillion coursing through the economy and a crash happen. We can have slow growth. We're going to have a terrible Q2, down 25 or 30%, maybe worse if things are worse. But we'll come back by Q4. The question is Q3 here, assuming Corona doesn't linger forever. But Q4 turns around, and next year should be a gangbuster year, 10% growth. I mean, really, we'll have job growth of 500,000 jobs a month or 600,000 jobs a month, which by historical standards is unbelievable. It just pales in comparison to the job losses of 17 million a month. But we'll make it back in 2 or 3 years. That's good growth. It's just getting there, just getting the next 3, 4, 5 months, bridging us there, which there's trillions of dollars and more, if they need more, will do.
All right. Thank you so much, Eliot. You have a ton of Coldwell Banker fans. Lots of love coming in through chat, so we appreciate your time. Thanks again, and be safe. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Chris.
Eliot, thank you very, very much. Again, my suggestion is make sure you jump on his blog, get the daily updates. There's a lot happening right now, econ70.com, is that right?
Right.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's move on. First of all, I want to apologize for, apparently I have to accept every one of you into this individually. So if I've been a bit slow in hitting the button to let everybody in, we'll try and change that for next time. But remember, this entire program is being recorded. So if you miss the first part, not to worry, we'll make sure you get a copy of that so you can catch all of the tidbits, all of the insight that Eliot gave to all of us. So just know that that's available to you. All right, so here's a quick rundown of what we're going to do the rest of our meeting today. We've got a couple things that are coming up that I think are really important. First of all, I'm going to walk you through some of the operational issues that we're going through right now as a company, so you're all prepared for that. We're going to talk about showing property, and recommendations around that as well. We're also going to be spending a little bit of time on the COVID-19 contract addendum and how that relates to the new 48-hour Freddie Mac Fannie Mae verification of employment requirement, which is now live in the market as well. We'll actually, I'm going to ask Dave D'Alina to go through clear cooperation and coming soon, some of the changes around that. And then I've got Noel and Elena talking about safe user, how to get your money faster and more accessible at the closing table. And then we'll open up for Q&A. So we have a lot to cover in the next 15, 20 minutes. But again, I appreciate you all being here. Just a reminder. The idea behind these types of events, our town hall here in Colorado, is really threefold. One, we want to make sure that we're informing you what's going on with the business, what's going on with the company. We also want to inspire you in some fashion, some way, and Eliot did a great job of providing, I think, a really nice picture of where we're at. He always sounds so sensible. He always has a really solid perspective on the business and what's happening in the world we live in. And then I want to make sure we got some time available for Q&A on any topic that you want to talk about. So kicking the operational piece off as a company, I want to make sure we're all on the same page and you hear it from me. Obviously, one of our biggest responsibilities in a time like this, the immense uncertainty that we have in the economy and in the market, is to make sure we are sustainable, make sure we're a good, solid, long-term partner. And part of that means making some very quick and I think important decisions. One is to preserve cash. My hope, the same way we are preserving cash, each one of you are preserving cash as well. You're looking at things you don't necessarily need right now and making those decisions to ensure that you've got resources available. So we have obviously cut back on non-necessities, if you will. But we're also, starting from Tammy and myself, we are taking a 30% pay cut month of April. We'll assess that as we get through April. All of my amazing branch leadership team and all of our department heads are taking a 20% cut in pay. All of our field staff is either taking a 10% cut in pay or reducing down to a 4-day work week. Quite frankly, there just isn't that much work to do. As you can probably imagine, it's a different time, a different space. And although we held pretty darn strong, quite frankly, the month of March looked pretty good, we're seeing our opens drop off dramatically right now, which obviously makes sense. It's what should be happening. And then we also made the decision 2 weeks ago to, out of our staff of about 60 people here locally in Colorado, we laid off 7 people, just so you're aware of that. Many of them were part-time help. And then last week, we did a furlough of 7 people. And it's hard. I mean, this is obviously one of the hardest things I've ever done, hardest thing that Tammy's ever done. But we've just got to be really insightful and really thoughtful about how we're running the business right now. We feel very optimistic that we'll get those 7 people back in their position soon while they're on furlough, just so you all know, so we all know, they are still considered employees of the company. Our intention is to get them back with the company as soon as we possibly can. That will happen when the business starts coming back in again. They have full Realogy benefits during this time as well. We're paying for those for them. But again, the goal is get them back in the saddle as quickly as possible. But again, I want to make sure that you heard that from me. I feel really good right now about where we stand in the market as far as our staffing, our ability to get the work done to support each one of you in the field. Our job is actually incredibly focused and incredibly deliberate. And that is, what can we be doing to help support each one of you? Without revenue coming into this company, without you being able to get a deal closed that is currently under contract, we have no money coming in. So everything we're doing is about supporting you to get that part of the puzzle done. So again, I just want to make sure that you are all aware of that. All of our offices remain accessible, although they are closed, meaning they're locked. They're not open to the public, and we want to keep our staff out of those offices. We want to keep you out of those offices. During this time, I think the one thing, I'll transition now over to running the business and how you are running your business right now. Oh, I got to admit some more people into our conversation. One of the things we know as a society is the best thing we can be doing right now is stay at home. The social distancing is working. It will help us flatten the curve. It is incredibly difficult to do that as a member of society. It's incredibly difficult to do that as an independent contractor when you're trying to balance your livelihood, your business, your client relationships, along with the other pressures that you may have. But hear it loud and clear from me. I know you hear it from Tammy and every one of our branch leaders. This isn't forever. This is a moment in time, and it may be 2 weeks, it may be 3 weeks, it may be a month, it may be a month and a half, but it's a moment in time. So as some of us on this call are scrambling, trying to figure out how to do business during this time, our recommendation is simple. This is a time to not focus on generating new business today. It's a great time to focus on building your business in the long run in the future, which means building deeper, more meaningful relationships with your clients and customers. And it also is a great time to become sharper as an individual, meaning this is the time to learn Moxie really well, how to be able to do a presentation electronically. It's a gift you are giving yourself that will last you decades to come. So this is the time to do those 2 things. Now let's shift over to showing property, because there's been a lot of question about, I think, this one piece of it. I think as a community, we're pretty clear on what we can and can't do when it comes to inspections, what we can and can't do when it comes to final walkthroughs, what we can and can't do when it comes to a closing, when it comes to appraisals. I think most of that is very clear for all of us. And that is, if it's being done, we need to make sure we are practicing to the best of our ability social distancing and doing it smart. And that starts out by making sure we have the fewest number of people possible at any one given place or time. And that, so if it's a show, if it's a inspection or it is a closing, just the players that need to be there. Utilize technology, utilize FaceTime, utilize Zoom, utilize Teams to do as much as you can around that. I think the one piece that is at question right now is this whole notion, this idea of showing property to a consumer who has not yet selected a property. And they're on the hunt right now for a number of reasons. I'm going to preface this conversation by saying this. Each one of you on this call is an independent contractor. What that means is ultimately you have to make the decision that you think is right for the situation that you're in right now, and the situation that is unique and special to the clients and customers you're working with right now. Let me give you an example. There's a very big difference between working with an investor who's out there trying to cherry pick a couple of great deals to add to their portfolio versus a family who's coming out of a rental property who cannot extend their stay in that rental property and will be homeless without a replacement home. Those are two very different situations. And my guess is, should any of us on this call find ourselves in a situation, it's the circumstance around that unique situation that is going to end up being the right or the wrong decision. Again, I preface this by saying, I'm not talking to you today about workarounds, how to get around the system. It's not about that. We all are going to benefit hugely by making sure we're doing the right thing whenever we can. But when you've got someone who needs to get into a home immediately, you're going to need to make a decision around that. And ultimately, here's what I want to say. You can call your manager, you can call me, you can call our corporate attorney, Curtis Shortridge, if you want to. And you're going to hear the same answer from all of us. And that answer is, the Attorney General is very clear about what their interpretation is. And that is, you can't show property. You can't. Unless the property is under contract and you're doing an inspection. And yes, there are a multitude of very creative agents that are looking at ways of creating a contract so that they can do an inspection as part of that contract. That's not what today's call is about. It's not about creating a workaround. I need you to know that you have to make the right decision for you, for your family, and for the clients and customers you're working. This is a temporary moment in time. So before we know it, we'll be past this, back to business. So please, on behalf of all of us, do whatever you can to not be out and about right now. Do not be out showing properties that you do not need to be shown. For all of us, it'll just make this much quicker for all of us. So I don't mean for this to be terribly vague, but understand that if you ask us the question, we have to give you the answer that has been memorialized by the Colorado Association of Realtors, all of our realtor associations, and ultimately the attorneys general. Okay, I think we're on the same page there. So with that said, I think what I would prefer to do is let's talk about the COVID-19 addendum before we go to Q&A. Have Tammy walk us through that because that relates to that 48-hour new requirement from both Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which will have really lasting implications around how we get to a closing. Tammy, cover that, and then why don't we use the opportunity after that, we'll introduce David to go over clear cooperation, and then we'll do Q&A.
Okay, great, Chris, thank you. So everyone has received the COVID-19 addendum that was put together by the Colorado Bar Association, and it is in CTM for everyone to use. If you're writing an offer, please use the addendum. You should be using this addendum with every contract. It's designed to protect both the buyers and the sellers. So on Friday, we learned that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are requiring a 48-hour verification of employment prior to closing. So 48 hours prior to the closing, Fannie and Freddie are requiring an employment verification. So with that said, legal has advised us in Section 1 of the COVID-19 shutdown extension, Section 1, where you're asked to complete the closing within so many days. Legal is suggesting that in that line you put 1 day from the original closing date due to governmental entities and or settlement service provider delays. So if you're caught in a situation where your buyer, they pull a verification of employment 48 hours prior to the closing, and for some reason their employer will not confirm that they will have a job moving forward or that their hours are the same, you have the opportunity within the addendum then to terminate the contract, and the earnest money will be returned to the buyer. So it's important, Section 1 again of that addendum, they're recommending that you fill in 1 day from the original closing date. If you have any questions on that, you can reach out to your manager or certainly me. That has been recommended by legal. So that is what I have for the 48-hour requirement. And so Dave D'Elena, if we could unmute Dave. Dave is going to talk to us about the Clear Cooperation and Coming Soon, which starts on May 1st.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you regarding the Clear Cooperation. I had the opportunity to visit with one of the RA Colorado directors today. They had their board meeting literally this morning and have approval from all three of the shareholder associations to move forward with the rules that are currently available, and you can see them if you go to the RA Colorado portal page, and you can download a frequently asked questions, which I did supply this morning or just before our conference call to Tammy and Chris to remind us what the rules are. So just to reiterate, the Clear Cooperation was voted on by all the board of directors at the National Association due to a concern that there was a lot of coming soon listings that never went into the MLS, and realtors, real estate professionals were losing their value as the trusted resource for inventory when buyers could go to other websites and find properties that you and I did not know about. So the rules as they stand now are, once a listing agreement is in place, you have 3 days, 3 business days to get a property into the MLS. You can put it into the the coming soon status now due to the pandemic for up to 14 days. That allows you to do direct marketing. It does not show up in any auto email searches that you have, but an agent like myself that saw Tammy Miller's coming soon listing, I could direct market that to my clients to allow them to see that property. If I decided to do an email blast of the property as the listing agent, then that would trigger the 1-day rule of the property having to go active in the MLS. Currently, again, due to the pandemic, we have 14 days that it can remain in the coming soon status. And on the 15th day, the property would automatically become active in the MLS. Please understand that if you allow showings or anything of that nature, that window closes and you have to have the property on the market within 1 day. Additionally, on that 15th day, if for whatever reason, the seller or yourself don't want that property to be shown, you have 2 options. Under no showings until in the MLS, you could put a date, example of 5/3. If you were to put 5/3 and let the property now active, your days on market would continue to accumulate. If you do a withdrawn status, the days on market does not accumulate, and I will help put your mind at ease. The folks at RA Colorado are going after the aggregators who are business models who are calling withdrawn properties, seeking to list those. I did receive information today that there's several business models out there that use robocalls to call all withdrawn listings. The fines are currently $150 the first time and going as high as $15,000 for violation of the robocall, or excuse me, of the withdrawn status, and pestering sellers, etc., without that agent confirming whether or not a valid listing contract is in place. Please understand that even during the pandemic, the Council of MLSs has voted not to change anything on the days on market as far as how that's counted and things of that nature, because they want to be able to have this history of what a pandemic can do to a real estate market. With that being said, there is the frequently asked question handout that will be available to you either through our leadership, or if you go to RA Colorado and click in the upper left-hand corner, there's the opportunity to pull it up through that. I encourage you to take a look at that document. And Chris, that concludes my report.
David, thank you very, very much for all the hard work you've done behind the scenes. I know that one of the reasons we're able to have Marshall Waters on our call next week is due to your relationship and hard work there. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. And also very clear picture of Clear Cooperation as well as coming soon. So thank you. I'm seeing that the questions line in right now. Thank you. I'll make sure I get back to all of those. But first, I wanted to invite Noelle Lovato to talk a little bit about a really cool way of getting you paid faster when it comes to your closings. Let me admit everybody else into this call. Got to change that next time around. Noelle, if you can unmute yourself, that'd be great. I don't see you coming up on my list here, so probably just my computer. Or Elena Hankins, if you're available, you can just pop right in and unmute your mic. And if neither are there, which I'm sure you are, Elena, there you are.
Hi, everybody. So they just wanted me to get on and talk to you a little bit about the option with Guardian to use SAFE for your pay check deposit. And I have to tell you, I was a little bit unsure about doing it myself. I'm old school. I like a paper file. I like to have a check to take to the bank. And they set me up at Guardian just because I wasn't in town for the actual closing on the buyer side. I pre-signed my seller. And that was several months ago. They deposited my check. They sent a copy of everything with your final documents. And, you get your final information for your 1099 after the fact. So you get everything that you need. It makes it a lot easier for the title company, and you get paid immediately. So the second that it closes, you don't have to go back and pick anything up. It's just automatically put into your bank as soon as the funds can be distributed. So super easy. I think it'll help Guardian out. Everybody's trying to do everything the safest way. So there's little touching and checks and that kind of thing. So anybody who hasn't signed up would be great if everybody can go in and do that.
Safe user. It's a great system. We really encourage it. It's something that Guardian is doing, really spearheading here in Colorado. It just gets that check, if I understand correctly, Elena, right from the closing, right into your checking account, super fast.
Yeah, they send you a text message before closing so that you can just approve where everything's going, and then it just hits right after the closing.
God, gotta love that. Great innovation. Thank you, Elena. Great to see you, by the way. Stay healthy as well.
Stay safe.
Okay, quick questions here I see as you roll down this. Yes, if you missed the first part of the program, it's all gonna be recorded. We will get that out to you. Yes, Brett, you're right. They do have wireless headphones. I just couldn't find them in my 1982 box I could find in my garage. Would like guidance on showing land, not a home. I think land, showing land. That's a great question. I think, again, it goes back to this idea that what we really want to see are fewer people out and about. So if it's not an immediate need, if they can wait 2 or 3 weeks, let's have them wait. If it's urgent, then I understand that. And I'm gonna let you guys define urgent, because you're the one ultimately who's gonna have to justify that in front of whomever it may come our way. So just make sure that you're really clear about why we have to expedite that. What are the specific numbers in the way, the decline of open transactions? So we came through last week pretty strong, end of the month pretty strong, just a hair below last year's opens. And then starting on the 2nd, as we're tracking that, we've dropped down about 22% in just 4 business days. So that's really significant, but again, most probably expected. Question here is, please comment on the overall financial health of Realogy. We came into this COVID event with high debt, et cetera. Absolutely, I think many of you are readers, you've read Inman, other sources. We were actually, I say we, but it was Ryan Schneider and team, were very insightful. Back the 2nd week of March, we liquidated nearly $1 billion in overall liquidity into cash, so that we had that cash set aside. Very insightful, very good timing for that. Now, with that said, we still carry about $3 billion, with a B, $billion in debt. We have for a number of years, since we were acquired by a private equity firm back in 2007, then respun out as a public company in 2012. I will say, though, historically, this year will be no exception. We've had solid profitability and ease of servicing that debt. So I think we're very well positioned. Other comment came in, Walmart, Home Depot are slam packed every day, but we can't go to work. Listen, we don't make the rules up here. Well, obviously, we're just trying to navigate what's already out there. One thing I didn't say, which I think is worthy of note, the lobbyists from CAR, the lobbyists from our local associations have been hard at work. And let me tell you right now, they are still hard at work. Our hope is we'll get more clarity on what we can and can't do. I think all of us on this call who understand how a real estate transaction works are a bit mystified that maybe others in governmental positions don't understand how the whole transaction works, but they are hard at work at that, so rest assured. Next question. Okay, vacant land, we did that one. Great point. Remax. Millennium is allowing showings if you submit an offer. Yeah, again, we can't determine what others are going to do. And quite frankly, each one of you are making decisions that you need to make on the go, on the fly. All I would recommend, Tammy recommends this as well, is that whatever decision you make sure it's defensible. Make sure it is something that really needs to happen. Our hope is within 3 or 4 weeks, we're back into a more normal environment when it comes to showings. This is not permanent. Tammy, go right ahead and jump in on a few of these if you'd like. We'll kind of tag team back and forth. You're on mute, Tammy, sorry.
Okay, here we go. What if we have a listing agreement with the seller and we have significant work that needs to do work on the property, or if they want to hold off on going active in MLS? I don't want to do any work on my client's house without a signed listing contract. So I think this is in reference, Dave, to the clear cooperation and the time frame of the 3 days.
Dave, you're on mute, just so you know.
There we go. Tried to figure out which one to utilize. So in that example, what an agent would probably have to do, Tammy, Chris, you would ultimately provide us guidance as well, would be for that agent to go ahead and list the property, put it into the MLS, and then immediately withdraw it so that that seller has the time necessary. Because what we're getting confused about is the reason behind why this had to go into effect versus specific examples that are going to require us to handle those situations uniquely. And in that example, you would go ahead and put it into the MLS and immediately withdraw it so that your sellers could have the time. It would allow you to feel comfortable, because I saw some questions regarding photography, and we're getting hung up on the mechanics versus the theory behind all of us being able to see the inventory and not losing our value to the consumer. I hope that makes sense and agrees with what yours and Tammy's thoughts would be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Laura Levy says, if you have clients who have to move, i.e. lease ending, please share their stories with your boards so they can continue lobbying on our behalf. If an unregulated inspector is allowed to enter a home and touch every possible surface, then buyer, using safe precautions, should be able to enter a home briefly and see if they actually want to buy the home. There's certainly more risk in going to a highly populated area like a Walmart or a post office than that example. Let's see here.
Chris?
Yes.
I wanted to jump in real quick, if you don't mind. As you probably remember, I was with Walmart for quite a few years, and I know a lot of their leadership there. And what Walmart is being told, just as an example, I know people are pointing at Walmart, King Soopers, Home Depot, etc. And what those folks are being told is if they don't see the numbers drop down, and you're already seeing it with King Soopers and Walmart limiting the number of consumers that can access the building at a time. But what they've been told is they will have to do like they're doing on the East Coast, where if I go into Walmart to pick up a gallon of milk, I may not be able to buy T-shirts and other items that are considered non-essential, because in those areas of the country where it's more severe, Walmart has implemented procedures whereby you cannot purchase non-essential items. So I think that's important for people to understand that what we're seeing is different than other areas of the country, and we don't want to see that here locally.
Yeah, I just read an article about Costco, same situation. They've closed half of their store but left half of it open to honor that rule. Tammy, what else do you see?
Let's see. I'm getting a lot of questions on the additional provisions or addendums, so I will resend those out to everybody. We have the addendum, we have a sight unseen addendum, and we do have an addendum for the seller. So I will send those out to everyone after the call.
We'll also send guidance out regarding Real Vitalize and how that is being managed during this time as well. Any thoughts about COVID effects on Gen Blue event in September in New York City? That event is still on the books, still planned. As we get closer, we'll get more information out to you. And yes, I would agree. It's great seeing all your faces too. I like this a lot better than the Teams live platform. I can see so many of you. I can scroll around here, and it's just really nice to see you. You all look great. Is there any additional questions? Okay. Tammy, anything else you see that we have not touched on?
I don't think so. We will answer, I will go through and answer the chats that weren't answered, and we'll send those out with a link for the meeting. And Chris mentioned at the start, our next town hall will be next Monday at 1 o'clock, and Marsha Waters will be joining us. So tell your friends to mark their calendar today for next Monday at 1 o'clock. We'll be chatting with Marsha Waters. Anything else, Chris?
No, I think that's pretty much a wrap. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know there's a lot going on trying to manage life around a home and around food and things that you need to get done. So I appreciate you being with us today. I also, next time we will be on Zoom again. I'll make sure that we don't have to accept you into the Zoom. You can just pop in at your leisure. I know these are unprecedented times. I know that there's so much uncertainty. And I would argue that the hardest thing for many of us is just not knowing what to expect, not knowing when this is going to be over, when we can get back to work again. That is incredibly hard for all of us. But I also feel very confident that a couple things are going to happen. First of all, we are going to flatten the curve by doing the right thing, by staying at home. We're also going to get past this. And I'll tell you, everything that Tammy and I and all of our branch leaders and all of our staff are doing every single day is to ensure that when we emerge from this, we emerge stronger. We emerge more focused, more committed. Much of what we're working on right now is adopting technology in ways that they aren't just things that help us get through today. These are things that will actually help us run a better business for you moving forward. How can we become more efficient? How do we get you paid faster, right? How do we make sure that we're using technology in ways we never imagined before when it comes to education, when it comes to being able to learn new things, communicate with our sphere more effectively? So just know that a lot is happening in the back room right now. When I'm not with you on a call like this, we're in another back room working on what can we be doing right now to make sure we're doing a better job of building this company. So we will reemerge. We'll reemerge stronger and better than ever before, but none of that matters without all of you. So job one is keeping each one of you healthy, your families healthy. Let's get past this so we can enjoy the good times. I look very forward to seeing you next Monday, same time, same place with Marsha Waters. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you. Be safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you.